Hello everyone, welcome to a new video in which I will be summarizing my main key takeaways from the 2021 Berkshire Hathaway Annual Meeting, which just took place yesterday, so May 4th, 2021. And the whole meeting lasted for about 5 hours, but in this video I will try to summarize in less than 10 minutes hopefully the most important points that both Warren Buffett as well as Charlie Munger brought about and discussed. And I think that it's always great to learn from what two of the most successful investors of all times have to say on the current state of the economy, the markets, and of course also on their company, which is Berkshire Hathaway. But I don't want to extend any more on the introduction, so let's go right into it. First of all, Warren Buffett started showing a comparison of the top 20 companies worldwide back in 1989 versus the top 20 companies worldwide today. And he did that to illustrate that none of the companies that was dominating the world back 30 years ago made it again to the list today. And he did that for two purposes, in my opinion. First of all, he made it very clear that it was also to showcase that America is doing very well because it managed to have many more companies in this top 20 list today than it had 30 years ago, which is of course a positive sign of how the economy has been progressing in America and how well they have been doing so far. But secondly, I think that it's also kind of a sign showcasing also that when investing over long periods of time, it is really hard to pick the winning stocks that will really be the leaders in the future, especially in such a changing world like the one we live nowadays. Also somehow linked to this and the reality, which is that beating the market over long periods of time is extremely hard, Warren Buffett was asked about the underperformance of Berkshire Hathaway during the past 10 years over the average of the market, but let's just take for instance the S&P 500. And on that, Warren basically said that he never recommended anyone to invest in Berkshire Hathaway, that if somebody does it, it's because they want to, and he doesn't want to push anyone to do so. And he also mentioned that if somebody doesn't know anything about stocks, then that person is probably much better off investing in just an index fund that replicates the S&P 500 than in Berkshire Hathaway. However, he did mention that Berkshire Hathaway is doing a good job and will continue to do a good job also in the future, even after he dies, because currently he is 90 years old, so he also touched upon this topic during a call. Together with this, something that I very much like about him is that he is very honest, he was very open also about the call, and he felt very comfortable also, at least from my perspective, even making jokes with Charlie Munger. And he mentioned that probably if he had not made several mistakes during 2020, so he admitted having committed mistakes, Berkshire Hathaway would be doing better today. But he also reminded everyone that we are living unprecedented times and that no one could have predicted that the economy, or more than the economy, the stock market would have performed as it has up until now, which is it just has been great and probably the best case scenario, or even better than the best case scenario that anyone could have forecasted. So that's also important to keep in mind. And among one of its mistakes that it highlighted during 2020, he mentioned that probably it was selling just a tiny portion of Apple shares, which they did towards the end of 2020, basically giving an understanding that they would have been better off just holding on to those. Regarding possible mistakes that Berkshire made during 2020, he was also asked whether he regretted having sold out completely of all of his airline stocks in March right during the crash. And to that, he answered that no, that he did not regret it. And he also added that he was not planning on adding any shares of airlines anytime soon. And adding more to it, he also reminded that Berkshire was the largest share, or a very large shareholder, in the big four airlines in the United States, so Delta, United Airlines, American Airlines, and Southwest Airlines. And that probably if he had not sold out of his positions, because he was owning around 8 to 9% of some of these companies, then maybe the government would have not given the aids and all the loans and things that they gave to all of these careers so that they could survive the pandemic. Essentially because if one of its major shareholders like Berkshire Hathaway, which has more than 100 billion in cash, clearly could help them, maybe they would not have stepped in. So he also reminded a bit on that, and I think that he is very true. Of course, we don't know how would things have turned out to be if he had held onto his stake in all of these companies, but that was just what he mentioned. The next topic that I would like to cover, because this is the most alarming one in my opinion, is regarding inflation. Because when Warren Buffett was asked about it, he replied that he's seeing very high inflation, and that from what he sees on suppliers, partners, and different stakeholders at Berkshire Hathaway, prices are going higher week after week. And this is just reinforcing something that we can already see if we look at the commodity prices, the equity markets, crypto markets, or even home prices, which are all going through the roofs. And this is a big concern in the market, that we really reached to a hyperinflation situation like the one that Venezuela had, and that had very catastrophic consequences. And of course, it is not just something that America is worried about, but I think that many other countries around the world who have printed a lot of money to stimulate the economy are kind of like in this situation, and people are really careful on that. And essentially, Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger just really reinforced this, and they did not seem very happy about having so much stimulus in the economy and printing so much money overall. But again, we have to see how this evolves, also looking into the future, whether this inflation is just temporary or it keeps rising and rising. Commenting also on other actions that the US government is taken, and more concretely focusing on the proposal to increase the tax for the rich, Charlie Munger was very skeptical about it. He said that he found it stupid, as rich people usually already pay very high taxes, they are generally speaking old, so they don't give many problems, and they also give to philanthropy. And he also stated that capitalism is good for society, as it has proved to be much more successful than any other method out there, and especially at increasing the GDP of the country and the quality of life of its citizens. Now that we are with what Charlie Munger commented when asked about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, he was very skeptical also, and this we already knew from previous interviews in which he had mentioned that he did not like it, and he basically reinforced that. And I quote directly what he said: "I don't welcome a currency that's so useful to kidnappers and exorcists and so forth, nor do I like shoveling out a few extra billions and billions and billions of dollars to somebody who just invented a new financial product out of thin air. So I think I should say modestly that the whole damn development is disgusting and contrary to the interest of civilization." This is basically what he said. And on this same topic, Warren Buffett decided to pass and not answer, stating that probably 99% of the audience watching owned some Bitcoin, and that probably what he was gonna say would only satisfy the 1%, which would be very stupid from his side. But with what he said, he basically already showed that he is contrary to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies in general. Another topic touched upon was on apps like Robinhood that allow people to invest with zero commissions, and especially with retail investors. And on that, Warren Buffett was also not very supportive of it, and saying that basically this has transformed in a form of gambling, and that people are just joining the stock market, making 30 to 40 trades per day, expecting to make profits, but at the end of the day they are just using this as a form of gambling instead of maybe going to a casino. And he thinks that you should not build a society around this. Finally, a last point to highlight from my side, and also kind of a warning and link to what we just mentioned now of newer investors in the market and trendy industries. He showed all the US manufacturers of cars that had started after Ford to try to replicate their model and also be successful and take part in the revolution of cars and so on. And out of the 2,000 companies that started, only 3 were still operating in 2009, which meant that all of the other ones had gone bankrupt before that. And this was clearly a statement directed to all the SPACs, especially SPACs related to electric vehicles, which, as we all know, they are very hot at the moment. And he was essentially with that suggesting that people are very careful with this, because it seems as if everyone was just investing in the next SPAC that comes out and that says that they will do or create electric vehicles, but based on history, many of these have failed, so they are very likely also, many of these, to end up going bankrupt. And well, this is the summary and the topics that I personally found more interesting of the call. But of course, as you can imagine, 5 hours of meeting, of event, leaves for a lot of room of talking and discussing topics, but I will not cover all of them here, just the most important ones, as I said. Overall, I really liked the call. I liked a lot the relationship between Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, making even jokes during the session, also being very open and transparent about the topics. And if you want to watch the full recording, I will leave the link to it down below in the description, because Yahoo Finance retransmitted it live through YouTube, and you can of course watch the recap again if you want. Anyways, that was the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, then don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you're not yet subscribed, and as always, see you next time.